Hi everyone, this is Attorney Lilian with Lily Legal, and I am here today um, with our immigration chat where we talk about an immigration topic. I take your questions. It can be about the topic that I'm talking about today or any other immigration topics that you want to talk about or that you have questions about. Okay, so that's what we're here for today. I am, like I said, Attorney Lillian. I am an immigration lawyer here in Worcester, Massachusetts. However, I have the honor and privilege to represent clients from all over the US and all over the world. So no matter where you are, I am here for you. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about VAWA. If you follow my page, you know this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because of the freedom and opportunity it gives people that are in abusive relationships. So I absolutely love talking about this topic, and I am going to be doing something a little different today with it. We're going to go over frequently asked questions, and then I'm going to cover how this can be a path for someone that is in an abusive relationship to get their freedom and basically be able to live in the US without worrying about violating US immigration laws. Okay, so that is what this topic today is going to be about. But before we get into that, I just want to cover why the topic is about freedom and basically finding ways for you to become free and get out of an abusive relationship, and immigration being a path towards that freedom. So today, for people that are not in the States, is officially the remembrance of Juneteenth. So if you are here in the US, you know that yesterday that was officially signed into law as an official national holiday. So, and it is being celebrated this year on the 18th because the 19th is a weekend. So that is really the reason that I wanted to make this topic about freedom and really giving you the tools in the immigration world for you to really get your freedom out of whatever relationship abuse situation that you're going through, especially if you're married to a US citizen or you're married to a permanent resident. So for those of you that don't know what Juneteenth is, it is the official Independence Day for the last enslaved Black people in the U.S. So although there was Emancipation Proclamation months and months earlier, however, the last enslaved people in the U.S. did not know that they were emancipated, so they were still living in plantations and still being enslaved. So this Juneteenth is the celebration of them finally knowing and that information reaching them that they are officially free. So today, let's celebrate that freedom by talking about how you, if you are in an abusive relationship with a U.S. citizen spouse or permanent resident spouse, can get your own freedom using the U.S. immigration laws, specifically VAWA. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about, like I said, the frequently asked questions. We're going to go through those. We're also, like I said, at the end, we're going to go over how this is a path for someone to get their freedom and to basically get out of that cycle. So the first question that I always get, I have a list of frequently asked questions when it comes to VAWA, because it's one of those things that is not really talked about as an option for people, or people don't even know it exists. So I'm going to start with the first question with it, which is, what is VAWA, right? Who qualifies for VAWA? So VAWA is technically called the Violence Against Women Act. It's a law passed by Congress to give individuals in a marital relationship with a U.S. citizen or permanent resident the ability to get out of that relationship and still be able to get status in the US. So the VAWA is a group of laws centered around domestic violence. However, there's certain provisions of it that deal specifically with immigration. So we're going to be talking about those provisions that deal specifically with immigration, not the other parts of the VAWA Act, okay? So who qualifies for this? So the first thing is, just because it says violence against women, right? Just because that's the name does not mean that this only applies to women. That's the first thing I want you to understand. It doesn't only apply to women, it applies to everyone, right? Depending on your gender identity, you could fall into any category and you will still qualify, as long as you're married to a US citizen or permanent resident and suffered extreme abuse or physical violence in the relationship. Okay, that's really the core requirement, not really your gender. So that's something to really keep in mind when we're talking about this. It says women in the title, however, it applies to everyone. Okay, so what is the so who can actually fall into this? You can qualify for VAWA if you were subjected to actual or threatened abuse or violence, right? Or you suffered mental or psychological injury. And that has to be from your US citizen or permanent resident spouse or former spouse. So it could be that you're still married to the person or that you two have already gotten divorced or separated. You can still apply. If you have gotten divorced, there are certain requirements that you would have to meet additionally in order to qualify. And that specific requirement is that you have to file for VAWA within 2 years of that divorce. Okay, let's say you got divorced and it was 3 years ago. Unfortunately, you would not qualify based on the language in the VAWA Act. But again, you should be talking to an immigration lawyer and not making that decision on your own. So that is the basic requirement, right? Actual or threatened violence, which includes hidden, beating, sexual abuse. Mental or psychological injury, which includes intimidation, economic abuse, humiliation, social isolation. So when it comes to the physical, the violence, is very clear what hidden and beaten and sexual abuse looks like to most people. And that's what people usually think about when they think about abuse, right? But I want to also expand your understanding of what abuse is. And that's why the mental and psychological injury part comes in, because there is so much more to abuse than physical violence. So that's why intimidation, economic abuse, humiliation, social isolation really plays a role in determining whether you were actually abused. So the economic abuse is something that people really do not consider abuse. So an example of this is, let's say you're working in the US, you're married to a US citizen, and they're basically whenever you get paid, they are taking your entire paycheck, keeping it, and then maybe giving you $100 allowance, okay? Or they're not allowing you to freely use your joint account. So there's so many layers to abuse that I want us to really focus not on whether this reaches the level of abuse, but I really want us to open our minds on how expansive what counts as abuse really can be, and you can't determine that on your own. You shouldn't be deciding on your own whether this is really abuse, right? Because there is studies out there that someone that is in an abusive relationship, after a while, you get it gets normalized and you do not see it as an issue. However, someone looking from the outside in can see that there are issues and that there are really strong mental or psychological abuse going on that you might not even recognize. So it's really important that you know that there's so many different types of abuse out there, and that just because you were not hit does not mean that you do not qualify for VAWA or that you could not qualify for VAWA. Okay. So what happens if you qualify? And this is something that, you know, like I said, you should not be determined on your own, especially if your initial reaction is, well, this wouldn't count as abuse, right? Or, oh, well, this happened, but I don't think it counts. Don't determine that on your own. I would strongly suggest speaking with an immigration lawyer before you make that decision. Okay? So if you are just joining us, we are talking about VAWA and how that can be a path to someone getting their freedom in the US and be able to get status in the US. As always, if you are here and you have questions either about the topic that I'm talking about or any other immigration topic, please feel free to just put your questions in the comment and I will answer it as we go along. If you are watching this on the replay, please feel free to do the same. Put your questions in the comments and I will respond as soon as I see it. Okay? So the next frequently asked question that I receive on VAWA is, what happens if I qualify, right? What do I get? Why should I even bother applying? How does that help me? So if you qualify for VAWA, one, you get deferred action, which means you cannot be removed from the US based on being here undocumented, okay? So that's the first thing. You can get a work authorization. You can qualify for public assistance in case you are in a situation where, let's say you left your abusive relationship and you are in the unfortunate situation where you're not working and you don't really have a network of people to help you. You are able to, once you qualify for VAWA, you're able to get public assistance so that you can get back on your feet and be self-sufficient again. So this is a huge part of VAWA. The next huge part is that you can apply for a green card, okay? As long as you qualify and you are not inadmissible to the US, you can apply for a green card without your spouse on your own. And if you qualify, you get a green card. If you do not qualify for a green card, remember, you have deferred action. You can stay in the US and work and live and not have to worry about ICE. As long as you don't do anything that they could use to take away that deferred action, most especially criminal activity, okay? So even if you do not qualify for a green card and you're able to get a VAWA, you still get the deferred action and you still get to stay in the US and work and move about freely in the US, okay? And then depending on your family situation, right? Let's say you have a child that also doesn't have status in the US. Your child can be a derivative of your VAWA application, and now your child can also get a green card. So there are benefits to applying and qualifying. So if you qualify and you apply, these are the things that you can get. Okay, first one, deferred action, work authorization, possibility of a green card if you are admissible to the US, and possibility of your children that do not have status to also be able to get a green card in the US. Okay, so this is a big big deal for someone that is trying to gain their freedom from an abusive relationship. I've seen people that ended up in shelters because they were trying to escape their abuser, and because they don't have status, they don't qualify for some of the assistance out there. And sometimes they don't think about the economic, the immigration aspect of things. Depending on the shelter and the organization, they might not even know that there's options available to the person to get their green card. So it's really important that I put this information out there so that if there's someone that's in that situation and is looking to gain their freedom, and one of their issues is immigration, definitely share this video with them, because they will get a lot out of it, and they will know that they have an option. That's really what I want to put out there, is that there's an option, there's a path for someone to gain their freedom and not rely on their spouse in order to get a green card in the US. Okay, so the next question, again, we're going through the frequently asked questions on VAWA. What if I'm no longer living with my spouse? Okay, what if I am no longer living with my spouse? Can I still qualify? And the answer to that is yes, but it depends, right? If you and your spouse are separated, not divorced, but separated, you can apply for VAWA. Okay? If you and your spouse are now divorced, you can apply for VAWA as long as it's within the 2 years, right? So 2 years, you have 2 years after your divorce is final to apply. So as long as you're still within that 2 years, you are able to apply. So that's really important here. And it's, another thing to keep in mind, that 2 years is if your spouse is a US citizen. So there is different rules for US citizens and permanent residents. So if your spouse is a US citizen and your divorce was less than 2 years ago, you can still apply for VAWA. If your spouse was a permanent resident and your divorce was, and you're already divorced, that might be, that's going to be an issue. Also keep in mind that if you remarry, okay, so if before your VAWA is approved, you get married again to someone else, you no longer qualify for VAWA based on the abuse you suffered from your previous spouse. So it's really important to keep that in mind as well, because with a lot of the immigration things, it's really important to keep in mind how long you have the timing requirements, because it can really change your whole immigration journey if you don't know that you're not supposed to get married. If you want to, you're not supposed to get remarried if you want to still qualify for VAWA. So even after you file, right, if it's not approved yet and you remarry, you're going to be now not qualified. Again, unfortunately, if the spouse that you remarried is also abusive, you can still apply under that, but you will not be able to apply under the previous spouse. Okay, so that is something really important to pay attention to as well. Okay, so if you are just joining us, we're talking about VAWA, how it can be a path to freedom for someone that's in an abusive relationship with a US citizen or permanent resident, and what path you can take. I've went over some frequently asked questions because I want to make sure that if you have those questions that I am answering it before we get into the other things that I want us to discuss about VAWA. So I'm going to go over what those frequently asked questions are again really quickly, and then we're going to get into the next part of this. So what is VAWA? Who qualifies for VAWA protection is the first question. So VAWA is the Violence Against Women Act. It is a law passed by Congress that gives domestic violence victims a path to gaining a green card. In order to qualify, you have to have suffered actual or threatened violence, mental or psychological injury, and those violence or injury has to be by your U.S. citizen or permanent resident spouse, or from a spouse if they were a U.S. citizen. Okay. Now, there are other provisions under this for parents, so children that were abused by their parents, and parents that were abused by their children that are over 21. Okay, so there are those provisions in there as well. I will go over that a little later in this program, but I really want to make sure that we really go through and cover the spousal part of it. Okay, now what happens if you qualify for VAWA? You get deferred action, you get a green card, you get a work authorization. Deferred action means that you are legally allowed to stay in the US. You will not be put in removal proceedings unless you commit a crime that makes you deportable. Okay, you can get a work authorization, you can get a green card, you can qualify for public benefits, and then you can also, once you have your green card and meet the requirements, you can get citizenship. What if you are no longer living with your spouse? That is okay. If you are separated, you can still file. If you are divorced and your spouse is a U.S. citizen, you have to file within 2 years of that divorce. Okay, so that is a quick rundown of the frequently asked questions. Now I want to go over and really let's do a little dive into what counts as abuse, because I know that there's so many different things out there about basic arguments or everyday things being considered abuse. But again, is it that it's like a one-time argument that really wasn't anything important, or is it a constant argument where you are belittled, where you're intimidated, where your immigration status is constantly brought up, right? I've had situations where the spouse is threatening to take away children because the spouse is either a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and they are threatening the the spouse that doesn't have status with, well, if you try to leave me, I will take the kids. Because you don't have status, a court won't give you custody of the kids. So that is a way to exert control and keep the person in the relationship, even though they are constantly being abused. So it's something that I really want us to understand, that abuse is really expansive and there's so much more to it than just an argument. Okay, so let's see, we have a comment. Let's see. Hello, Lily. My bro is a Liberian living in UK illegally, and he is in a relationship with a green card holder. She is willing to get him in the US through legal process. Please advise her on this matter. Okay. Yeah, so if they are living in the UK, but so if they are in a relationship, if they get married, so for a permanent resident, so a green card holder, to file for someone that they are in a relationship with, they have to be married to the person. right? There's no fiance visa. I say this all the time, but there's no fiance visa for green card holders. So their option really is to get married if they want to come to the U.S. based on the relationship, right? That's really the question is, are they trying to come to the U.S. based on the relationship? If they are, then a fiance visa is not really an option because, as we all should know by now by watching my videos, is that fiance visas are only available to U.S. citizens. Okay, so if they want to get here based on relationship, they would have to go through the process of getting married and then filing through that process. Again, depending on their particular situations, there might be more layers to this, but generally for a green card holder to bring a spouse to the US, they would to bring someone, their significant other, to the US, they will have to be in a marital relationship. Hi Faith, nice to see you. You're always welcome here, and it's so good to have you watching today. You know what I mean. So if again, as always, if you have any questions, comments, please put them in the comments and I will respond to you. If you are watching on the replay, feel free to go ahead and comment with your questions and I will respond to you as well. I try to get to those questions and make sure that I answer, because you're not live with me, so I can't really answer your questions live, but I always do go back and respond. And sometimes I make a Tuesday tips video based on your questions. So go ahead and do that. Okay. So we are, for anyone that's joining us currently, we are talking about VAWA, right? And how it can be a path to freedom for someone that's in the U.S. without documentation, that is married to a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. Now, I want to talk about, I know I mentioned that parents and children can also qualify for VAWA. So I don't want us to limit ourselves to just talking about spouses. But I also want to talk about when parents have status, right? When a parent has, is either a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and they are abusive towards their child, again, the same criteria for abuse apply here. Okay, that's physical, violence, psychological or mental injury to the child. All of that really factors in for when you're looking at whether a child can file for VAWA based on abuse they suffered from their parent. So again, the same things that I have said apply here. The child does not have to live with the parent in order to apply, okay? However, they have to have lived with the parent in the US when the abuse happened, right? So that's something to keep in mind. The abuse has to happen in the US. Now, for parents with abusive children, again, the same criteria for abuse apply for parents with abusive children. Because if, let's say, your child has status and they are constantly intimidating you, humiliating you because you don't have status, and refuse to let you work, let you see people, they control when you leave the house and when you don't. All those things are forms of abuse. Again, it depends on the level of it, but all those things in combination can rise to a level that's extreme enough for the US government to say that you should get a VAWA approved. Okay, so for parents, your child that caused the abuse has to be 21 or older, okay? Because only children 21 years or older that are US citizens can apply for a parent. So for parents to get status through VAWA, the child, again, must be 21 years old or older and a U.S. citizen. Okay, if your child is a permanent resident, unfortunately, you have to wait for them to become a U.S. citizen. And hopefully you're not still in that abusive environment for waiting for them to become a U.S. citizen. But that is an option available for children, parents, and spouses. Okay. Let's see. So we have another question. In case the person is a U.S. citizen, how long will it take her to invite her partner to the U.S.? Again, it depends on the process that they are applying for. When you say invite, I would recommend having either your brother or the person that he's in a relationship with reach out so that we can have a full in-depth consultation and give them all the options. But without knowing more about the two of them, on a basic case where a U.S. citizen is applying for a spouse to come to the U.S., you're looking at, right now, it can take anywhere from a year to 2 years, depending on where the person is, and what the consulate is doing where they are. So it really, without knowing details about the people, I can't really go into, I can't really give any concrete answer. I can just give you a range for a typical case. And that typical case, again, like I said, it will depend on the consulate. It will depend on how long USCIS in the U.S. is taking to process cases, which service center gets the application. There's a lot that it would depend on, and I would need more information. But I hope that somewhat answers your question. Okay, let's see. As a green card holder for 10 years, how fast is it to file in for my mom and daughter? Okay, so again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news on my show, okay? One, green card holders, if you've watched my videos, green card holders cannot file for their parents. Only U.S. citizens can file for parents. So for you to file for your mom, you would have to be a U.S. citizen first, okay? So if you've had your green card for 10 years, watch my citizenship video, and it goes over the requirements and all of that. And you can, if you qualify for citizenship, you can apply for citizenship. And then once you get that, you can apply for your mom. Okay. And then for the daughter, so your length of time as a green card holder, just a general response here. It doesn't really matter how long you've had your green card. So the day you get your green card, you can file for the people that you're allowed to file for as a green card holder, which is your children that are unmarried and your spouse. Those are the two groups of people that permanent residents, green card holders can file for. So it doesn't, your length of time as a green card holder doesn't affect how quickly the process goes through. Okay, it's the same amount of time for someone that's that just got their green card today versus someone that's had their green card for 10 years. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, it can take, if the embassy is open, that right now is current. So it is taking about, again, depending on the embassy, it can take anywhere from a year to 2 years for that process to go through. It will depend on, a lot of different things, how old the child is. I'm guessing if your daughter is under 21, it's going to be faster. It will be the 1 year to 2 years. If they are over 21, there's no visa currently available for children of permanent residents over 21. So you have to wait for a visa to become available, which can take, which right now is taking time. Okay, it's taking several years, but it's not impossible. You just have to be patient and know that if they're over 21, you have to wait for a visa to become available, because there's only so many visas issued every single year for children over 21 of permanent residence. And also keep in mind, if your child is already over 21, they should not be getting married. Even if they're under 21, if they want to come, if you're going to file for them, okay, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit. So if you are a green card holder filing for a child, right, your child should generally not get married until you become a citizen. Okay. Once your child gets married, before you become a citizen, you are now not eligible to file for her. That's something to really keep in mind. So once the child is married, they're no longer considered a child for permanent resident purposes. Only citizens can file for children that are married. Permanent residents cannot. So if your child gets married before you become a citizen, the application is canceled and they have to wait till you become a citizen to start over applying for them. So now I'm going to get off my soapbox because that's something that happens a lot, and I want to make sure that people are clear on that. So, oh, thank you. I'm glad you found this. You found my response helpful. Again, as always, I am happy to take your questions and comments. Go ahead and put it in the comment box, and I can respond to you live. Okay, you don't have to wait. Like I tell people, scheduling a consultation with me, you do have to pay, but that's why I have this forum for us to have a chat and for you to get information and then decide if you need more from me and decide if you want to schedule that consultation. So feel free to ask your questions. Okay, so just to wrap up the VAWA, I want to make sure that we understand how this can be a path to freedom, right? Because that's, if you saw the topic, it's how it can be a path to freedom for someone that is in an abusive relationship, whether it's spousal relationship, parent-child relationship. This can be a way for someone to go from not having status and being with someone that is abusing them versus them now being able to get out of that relationship because now they have status. Now they are able to stand on their own. Okay. So it's really important that we not only talk about the requirements, but how this can change someone's life. And that's why I do what I do, because I understand how important immigration can be to someone's ability to just live day to day. So let's talk about what you, let's go over again what you get once you are approved, right? Once you qualify for VAWA, what is it that you get? So when you apply, the first thing you typically would get is a letter saying that you, you know, I call it a pre-approval, right? So you could get pre-approved, which is basically saying, based on the documents that you sent in, we think you qualify, but we have to do more. We have to look into your case more before we can actually approve you. But for right now, what you sent us, we think you qualify and you should be able to get public assistance. So that's the benefit of getting pre-approved with VAWA, is that now with the pre-approval letter, if you are in, a homeless shelter, for example, if you just need a little assistance, you can apply for public assistance, right? You can apply for food stamps, you can apply for housing. Those are things that you are now able to do and able to start building your life back up. Another thing is that you can get a work authorization, right? You are now able to work. You'll get a social security number, you'll be able to work, you'll be able to live, right? You'll be able to live and not worry about someone else supporting you financially. You don't have to rely on your spouse to support you financially. You don't have to rely on your spouse to file for you in order for you to get status. Because sometimes that's another tool that abusers use to keep the abuse under control, right? So that's something to keep in mind. And then the biggest thing you get is that you get to apply for a green card. And once approved, now you are a permanent resident. You can apply for citizenship once you qualify for citizenship. So there is so much you can get out of this, and there's so much freedom. So before your VAWA is even approved, there's so much you can get, right? You can get the pre-approval, you can get the work authorization while you're waiting for the VAWA to be approved, while you're waiting for the green card to be approved. You can basically start building your life back up. So that's why I say, for someone that's going through some of these situations, this is a path to freedom, a path to not relying on the U.S. citizen or permanent resident spouse for you to basically live the life you want in the U.S. Okay, so I hope you found this helpful. I hope you know, I hope you understand how this can be a path to freedom. And if you have any questions, please put it in the comments. If you are watching this on the replay and you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the comments. I am always happy to respond and just continue this chat. I know we're here Fridays with the immigration chat, but I always want to continue the conversation. I love talking about immigration. It's all I do. So it's all I do in my business. So it's really important that we continue the conversation. So if you have questions, don't be shy. Go ahead and ask it. If you are shy and you don't want to ask it on a public forum like Facebook or YouTube, feel free to send me a message with your questions, and I will respond to them on the next live. Okay, just tag it with like question for live so that I know that it's a question you wanted to ask me on the live. Okay. And then, oh, thank you, Faith. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you found this helpful. As always, if you find my videos helpful, please do like, share, and if you're watching in a place where you can subscribe, please go ahead and subscribe so that you can get notified every time I go live, and you can get all this information and resources. If you want to meet with me personally and go over your case and see what options are available for you, please feel free to do so. You can either go on my website or call my office. We can take your calls 24/7, so don't be shy. Go ahead and call and schedule that consultation. All right. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week Friday with more immigration chat. Bye for now.